Hey, this is Josh, and I'm out of hiatus, and I'm picking up Plutus smart contract development again. I'll be creating a series of videos that'll be more practical and have more code snippets that will help people jumpstart development versus trying to go through all the theoretical experience and walking through code. And so we'll see how that goes. So to start things up, I'm going back to square one, and I'm going to set up my dev environment again. Specifically in this video, we're going to set up a Windows WSL instance, which basically allows us to have a Linux environment directly on our Windows machine. And then we're going to connect to it using an extension in Visual Studio Code. And then from there, I'll show you how to set up our work environment to be able to deploy the Plutus playground, which will help us iterate and create our own Plutus script a lot faster. Now, as always, the instructions are all in the description below. So without any delay, let's get started. The first thing we need to do is we need to go to the WSL installation instructions, which I included in the description below. But essentially, all we need to do is we need to run this PowerShell command wsl-install. Now, you might need to follow the manual installation instructions if you have an older version of Windows, but I assume for most of us this wouldn't be the case. But with the command, we just copy and paste and we just run it. In my instance, I already installed WSL, so I get all these messages. Now, the most important part is once you have installed this, you need to make sure that you restart your machine. You might also run into a specific problem where you don't have a specific Linux distribution installed. So if that's the case, like I had, and that's the case, you can go to this link, aka ms/WSL store, also in the description below. And this will open up your Microsoft Store. And if you give it a sec, you can have the option of installing Ubuntu on your machine. Now, I already did it, so I won't do it again. But when you install it, you'll just go through the process, create an account for yourself, and then you should be good to go. And of course, remember that you might have to restart your computer for all of the changes to take in effect. Alright, so now that you have your WSL installed with a Ubuntu instance, all you need to do to access it is to go back to command prompt and hit WSL. We're going to do some setup work first before we can access it from our Visual Studio Code. Just maximize the command prompt and make the screen bigger. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get an instance of the Plutus playground, which you can get by going to their GitHub page, which is over here. As always, links included. And to clone the repo, we just need to go to code and then just copy and paste the link. Now, I'm going to assume that you have Git installed on your machine. I already had it, so I don't know if WSL comes with it. If not, you have to install it on your Windows, and the rest will be taken care of for you. So, depending on where you end up, I ended up in my user over here, but this is the folder on my machine. Instead, I want to go to WSL, which you can go to by typing cd in the squiggly line. And this will take you to the root directory of your WSL instance. Now, all you have to do at this point is type git clone and then just paste our GitHub repo that we want to clone onto our machine so we can deploy and build our Plutus playground. So I've already done it, as you can see, so I'm not going to do it again, but that should be all. Now, after this is installed, we need to actually be able to deploy and run it. So the best way I found doing that is to use something called Nix. Nix is a tool that allows us to set up a private environment with its own dependencies, which in this instance, input-output HK already has a Nix file with the dependencies that we need inside the repository, such as inside Plutus. You'll see that there's a default Nix. So I won't go into the details of that, but this will allow us to deploy and run the Plutus playground and many of our other Plutus scripts. So to be able to do this, we need to run Nix. And to do that, we need to install Nix, which I will include in the description below, but I'll just paste it. But we use curl to download the Nix application and install it. And once Nix is installed, you have to close the command prompt and then reopen it and reconnect to your WSL instance. The final thing you need to do is you need to set up caching for Nix so it doesn't download the same files over and over again, which would take a long time. To do that, we need to create a nix.conf file specifically at our /etc/nix folder. It might not exist for you, so we have to make it. As you can see, I already have it. So if I do ls, you can see that I have a nix.conf. So what I found I had to do is I had to give a sudo command, otherwise I might not have permission to actually create the file. Sudo, and I use vim. You can use whatever choice of text editor you want. I'm just familiar with vim. And just go to nix, and then you do nix.conf. And then once you're in here, all you need to do is copy and paste the line that I included in the description below, and basically just right click. Oops, I should have done that, but right click to paste the content. You just hit escape, W and Q to save your changes and set up your cache. In my case, I'm not going to save anything. I'm just going to quit. So if you've done everything correctly, in theory, you should have a nix.conf file inside your etc nix directory. Now that we have that set up, the final thing we need to do now is actually deploy and run nix. I'm already in it, but we have to go into our Plutus directory. And once you're in, just type nix shell, and this will start downloading and deploying all the code that we need to be able to run our smart contract code. Now, the first time around, it'll take quite a while. And that's roughly all you need to do to set up an environment to start your smart contract development. Now, to make this process faster and easier, we're going to set up this exact environment on VS Code to quickly write and develop code. All right, so for those of you unfamiliar, VS Code is my favorite lightweight editor. It has a lot of neat features like autocomplete, debugging, built-in debugging, built-in Git support, and a lot of extensions. And of course, unlike other applications like maybe Visual Studio Code, it's pretty lightweight, so it's fast and easy to install. Now, if you don't have it already, the setup process is simple. You just hit download, get your exe, and then install it. Afterwards, we need to install an extension, the remote development extension. The link's in the description below, of course. So to install it, all you need to do is just hit install, open Visual Studio Code. It will take you to the extension installation page. As you can see, I've reinstalled it. Now, after you installed it, you'll see a new button in your tab on the left, the Remote Explorer. And it might not be set up correctly initially, but you just need to change and select your WSL target. And it'll find your Ubuntu installation. And in theory, it should also find your GitHub repo that you cloned recently. Now, before we move on, you might ask, what's the point of doing this? And the reason is, and I'll show you the reason. If you just connect to it, and say don't save, you can see on the left here on the Explorer that I'm actually directly connected in my VS Code to my WSL instance. You can see that we're in the Plutus repository. So in VS Code, we will be able to directly edit anything inside our WSL instance, which is pretty cool. Another very powerful and useful thing is if you hit, I believe, the control squiggly line. If I'll close this, it'll open up a terminal instance. And with this, you can actually connect to your WSL all on the same page without you needing a separate command prompt. So all of this is very powerful, quick, and easy to develop a Plutus application. Now that we have our environment set up, I'll quickly show you how to deploy the Plutus Playground application, which will be the fastest way for us to prototype in a smart contract. So as always, make sure that you are in the Plutus repository that you just cloned. We need to set up nix shell to get the environment to work. So we just do nix shell and wait for it to finish loading. And let me increase the screen size. All right, so now that we're in our nix shell environment, we need to go into our Plutus Playground client. And there's a special symlink setup, apparently, if you just do Plutus Playground server, that will start the backend script needed to run the server. And while this is running, we just go to this little plus sign and create another bash default instance, because we need to do two things. We need to create the backend server, which we just did, and we also need to create the frontend that we will connect to. And to do that, we do Plutus Playground client. Also, just on a quick note, now that we have our nix shell open, all the tools like Cabal that you might have seen in the Plutus Pioneer program is available over here. If you want to build and deploy any smart contract that way, you can do it too. Anyways, so now that we're over here, we just need to start a npm instance. So do npm run start, or potentially you might have to npm install the dependencies you need for the web server, but this will be like a one-time thing. And then after you've npm installed everything, do npm run start to start your front end. Oh, right. Okay, I forgot. Same mistake. I don't have npm installed on my WSL instance. We actually need to do Nix shell. Go back. We need to do Nix shell one more time, which then would give us all the dependencies that we need, which also includes npm. All right, so now that we're back in our Nix shell again, we go back to Plutus Playground client, and then we just do npm run start, and that will start our front end server. All right, and so now we're done. So note that we have both our backend instance, which is done, and also our front end instance. And to connect to the page, we just visit the link that the npm gave us. So I go back to this browser and just the website. Now, two things I want to point out. The first thing is that it says it's not secure, but it's fine. And the second thing is that make sure that the address they're using is HTTPS. I was stuck at the longest time just using a normal HTTP link and was not able to connect to the server, as you can see. So HTTPS, very, very important. So that's all you need to do to set up the Plutus Playground and set up a work environment on your VS Code in your Windows machine without having to set up any fancy VM box that you have to connect to. You can write code directly on your Windows and deploy it. And that's it for setting up your own Linux instance on your Windows machine to test and deploy your smart contracts. My hope is to continue creating these small chunks of video with more practical examples of how you might go about developing a smart contract. If you want to learn more, please like and subscribe so that you will get notified when I send out more of these small size examples. But until then, happy development, and I'll catch you all later.